Hello and welcome live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. This is the Week in Review, of course, the program where we review some of the big stories to come out of the week, perhaps look at headlines, what's kept South Africans talking. As always, I'm your host, Liesl Wilson. Let's get straight into your headlines. KwaZulu-Natal Cooperative Governance Department has cautioned residents to avoid low-lying areas as rains resume in most parts of the province. The National Institute for Communicable Diseases has recorded 1,846 new COVID-19 infections. And further afield in the Middle East, Palestinians clash with Israeli security forces at Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque. Right, those will look at your headlines. Let's get into some of the stories we're reviewing today. In fact, it continues as a developing story where search and rescue teams have begun combing through Matikwe, Umzinyati and Pola rivers in Inanda area, which is just north of Durban, in efforts to retrieve 7 bodies. The team consists of police divers, K9 unit investigating 7 cases of missing persons believed to have drowned in the rivers when their shacks were washed away by raging floods on Monday night. Vusi Kumalo and camera person Sbu Tembe on the scene.
The search and rescue teams are here at Inanda area at the Pola section to investigate the cases of 7 people or bodies who may still be trapped in some of the logs and trees, as well as the river that's cuts through this community of Umzinyati. That's an area that's on Ward 103 from eThekwini local eThekwini municipality. With me is one of the family members, a family member who has apparently lost 7 or 10 family members during the floods in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Sikwamukele sisi just yeka fushane ukuthi njengomndeni nizizwa ninjani ngemumva ukuthi amalungu omndeni ayishumi alahleke lapho okukholakala ukuthi amanye awo ashonile njoba kutholakala imizimba emine.
Angikwazi ngisho ukuchaza indlela engizizwa ngayo, broken, angizazi ukuthi ngizothi nginjani because lento eyenzakalile angazi ukuthi ngachaza ngithini. Kunzima kakhulu kumina, especially bese duze kwami usisi wami wahamba konke nezingane zakhe, so kunzima kakhulu nje angikwazi nje ukuchaza indlela engibhlungu ngayo.
She's saying that it is very difficult for her to explain or to describe the kind of feeling because she's currently distraught about to talk about this matter that had befallen on her family. As Usbu Mthembu is showing you these search and rescue teams consisting of the off-road rescue, consisting of the K9 units that will be your sniffer dogs that are also here. We're also seeing the fire units. They are also here as well to ensure that they may be bringing to surface some of the bodies that may still be trapped, as Boom Tembo is showing you. The Sbu Tembe is showing you these fire divers, police divers who are here as well to ensure that they do help the families who are in distress currently as we speak. As you can see, the sniffer dogs from the K9 unit. We are also seeing eThekwini Fire. We are seeing police divers who will be combing this area in their efforts to find the bodies, of which there are 7 of them believed to be still trapped in the river or in the Pola place. I can tell you that KwaZulu-Natal has lost 395 people during the floods, of which eThekwini remains the hardest hit with more than 300 deaths so far being accounted. But many people are still missing. Hence, we are seeing these search and rescue teams that are here to comb this river because they believe that some of the bodies are still in this area. With that said, let us hand it back to you in the studio.
Right, we continue to monitor the devastating effects from what's transpired in KZN due to the floods, and we'll continue to update you. Meanwhile, humanitarian organisation Gift of the Givers search and rescue teams and its partner organisations have joined forces with the Western Cape Disaster Management and KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Disaster Management to carry out search and rescue missions. Now, these will be conducted in water and on land, as many missing people as a result of the devastating floods have yet to be accounted for. Gift of the Givers said it will provide helicopter access, backup equipment and all necessary support as the death toll caused by the floods and severe weather in KwaZulu-Natal continues to rise. Earlier on, SABC News spoke to Gift of the Givers founder Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman.
The services are overstretched. It's impossible to get to so many places, and I've had personal experience with that, trying to assist a family, trying to recover a body of a domestic in their own house. And there's not enough earth-moving equipment, there's not enough trained personnel. It's just there's too many requirements in too many areas, which means the death toll is going to be far higher than what we've seen. And so as a result of that, and the other thing the person mentioned is, in Zulu, he said he wants closure. You know, that's the most important aspect of people passing on. People want closure, and we've been focusing on the destruction, the bridges, the containers in the water, the broken homes, the landslides, the mudslides, but the emotional, psychological aspect is far more greater, because that's very difficult to repair. And that's why these teams have been brought down, and I compliment the KZN Provincial Disaster Management, who took the bold step to say, you know what, we can't manage. Now that's a brave move to make, to say, please, can you give us help? And they called the Western Cape Disaster Risk Management came in. And of course, we have very good relationships with them, because Western Cape has fires, you know, all the time. And we work with them. And part of the team members, also part of Gift of the Givers team members that travel with us. So they came down and they said, called us and said, can you join us? So we said, certainly we will. And so we brought our teams down, and some of them are still on the way from other parts of the country. The command center is set up now in Virginia Airport in Durban. From there, it'll be proper coordination to go to the different areas. But what we do require is from those media houses, local and international, and even from public people who have been in different areas, if they can send us a message and say, you know what, this is the area where we last were, and there was somebody missing here, or somebody drowned here, or somebody's caught up in a building. If we can get that kind of information, it helps us very much to get to the areas much faster and do recovery faster. All information that comes to us makes lives much easier, and we can get to the area much faster. But that's the whole issue. We need to get feedback from the public. And we know in Inanda, as a gentleman mentioned it, this actually started off because one of my team members was in Inanda. And he said he saw the people sitting on the side of the river. And he asked them, what you're doing there? You know, it's not safe, it's risky. So they said, we're waiting for the bodies of our relatives to flow down so we can catch them and give them a decent burial. And when we started getting, and then we got another message from Reservoir Hills. And the lady said, we are in Ender Drive, there's a family in Ender Drive, 2 children are missing, there's not enough people to come and help. Can anybody help? We're helping dig, but it's very, very difficult. There's 2 missing children in this area, can you help? Similar messages came from other areas, which made it very, very clear that emergency services can't cope. Not their own fault, not their fault, but because the volume of people affected is too much. So to save time, you don't want to start digging and searching in water. It takes a long time. So that's why I say, if people have an idea and say, look, in my area, in Inanda, in Mlazi, in KwaMashu, in Red Hill, in Effingham, wherever, Chatsworth, Phoenix, Swedderlam, Tonga, somebody disappeared here, please, can you come here? The building fell on somebody, and they're in the building. We can get a decomposition smell, or they got washed away in the water here, so we know where to look. If you do that, we'll save a lot of time and try to, together with all the teams combined, try to get back as many people, recover as many bodies as possible, so people can have closure.
All right, for more on the floods in KwaZulu-Natal, let us bring in our reporter Nozintombi Mia, who is standing by for us in Marion Hill. A very good afternoon to you, Nozintombi. Thank you for joining us. Perhaps walk us through, what you can tell us about the recent developments with regards to the amount of damage that has been assessed in the area as we speak.
Yeah, you're quite right, Liesl. It's really starting to come down in earnest. We've had to change into raincoats just to be able to get our feet on the ground and continue speaking to the residents that are affected. We were in a certain section of Marion Hill where the mountain had basically collapsed on some of the houses. And then we moved further up to a higher part of the ridge of Marion Hill where houses were completely destructed. And now, Lisa, I just want to give you an idea of what exactly is happening right now. We are following a convoy that consists of the Zulu King, as well as the Premier, as well as the Motsepe Foundation, because we do know that they are doing they are visiting some of the families whose members died in the flooding. But, you know, the sense that we're getting is that communities are feeling a bit frustrated that, you know, a week after the initial flooding, initial rainfall, there still does not seem to be a lot of action happening. And instead, it just seems to be convoys on convoys on convoys with site inspections. You know, the sense we're getting on the ground from communities is that, you know, they understand that government is taking stock. They understand that there are multiple different organizations that are involved in assessing the situation. But what they're calling for, basic things, they're calling for provincial government to set up stations where they can get access to basic things like warm soup, bread, access to blankets that they can be able to cover themselves overnight. I mean, you can see that it's pouring down with rain. We're standing literally at the mercy of the elements. But in as much as we're standing in the mercy of elements and moving from location to location, these are people who are anchored here, who are stuck here, who feel that they are hemmed in and they have nowhere to go. Their houses are collapsed, or their houses have got a lot of damage. So there's a lot of rain that's coming in. And as the rain keeps pouring down throughout the course of the day from last night, what they're saying is they would like a warm meal in their bellies. And they're saying they understand that it is going to take a while for the water tankers to be set up and for the electricity to be set up. But they're calling on provincial government to set up stations for them to have the most basic necessities, such as access to bread, access to soup, access to blankets. Some people don't even have shoes. Some people don't even have jackets. Provincial government has been telling us all the things they're going to be doing, but what community members on the ground are saying, enough talk, action is needed now. Set up stations in different parts of the communities where people can actually go there. They can spread the word throughout communities. They can be able to access a warm meal for breakfast, a warm meal for lunch, a warm meal for the evening, a blanket to be able to cover themselves overnight. I mean, the rain that you're seeing now, it was a light drizzle earlier in the morning from about 6 o'clock, but it has progressively gotten worse. You can start seeing evidence of water pooling again around the areas. It is a cold, wet, miserable day, and they're saying that they understand that there are convoys, they understand that there are provincial, high-ranking provincial delegates that are convoying, that are going to meet families, and it is important, it is an important show of force, but what they want is actual tangible stations that they can physically go to go and get even the most basic of items. Liesl.
You speak about, you know, contingency plans that are being assessed and being put in place as we await the ultimate assessment of what the damages look like. And I wonder, in terms of housing and accommodation, I mean, what's transpired on that end, particularly for those who've been left destitute? You've spoken about, you know, needing some of the more basic services, including blankets and warm meals, etc. But as you say, the rain continues to come down. What have you heard on the ground in terms of that? And also in terms of day-to-day operations, schooling, church, it is the long Easter weekend as well. What do we understand, you know, with regards to that? How is life slowly beginning to resume, if at all, as we're speaking?
Yeah. It's been an absolutely miserable Easter weekend for a lot of the communities here. And life has basically come to a standstill because schools have been closed. communities have been affected because roads have been blocked off. There's no access to the roads because some of the road networks collapsed during the course of the week as a result of the flooding. But from last night, because the rain has been pouring down, we're starting to see the mud pool again. We're starting to see the roads getting flooded again. We're starting to see access routes being problematic yet again. So life has really come to a standstill right now for these community members as they try to put together the pieces of their lives around the issue of where people are sleeping. Earlier when we were at a community down by Marion Hill, one of the community members said that those whose house structures are still standing are accommodating some of the other community members whose houses were completely washed away and completely flooded. And you could see the absolute devastation and worry and fear, rising panic of the community members there. They're sleeping on the floor in this weather because government has not been coming in to give them basics like blankets or even basic materials such as plastic to be able to cover the roofs. There's no temporary bedding like a roll-out mattresses. There's nothing that has been given to these communities in the 6 days since the flooding, other than provincial government making assessments and making promises. We know that the president has released emergency funding. Time is now, it is time now. What the community is saying is that it is time now for provincial government to start handing out the items. It is too late to give communities bedding and food from Monday. They've spent 6 days. It's going to be almost 7 days that they wouldn't have gotten access to food. They wouldn't have gotten access to some form of basic shelter. They want to see by the end of the day, they want to be able to have actual plastic sheets to cover their structures. They want to be able to have basics such as blankets at the end of the day. They want to be able to go to the community center to be housed there. What we saw with the community center, it's empty. There's no people staying in the community centers. Instead, residents are housing each other. This again leads to the frustration of community members that they're saying they do understand that the funds are available. They do understand that there will be oversight that will be put in place. We do know that the public protector released a report saying that from as early as next week, she's going to be sending down a group of assessors and investigators to ensure that there is transparent spending of the emergency relief funds that are being released. But on the ground, what communities are saying is enough talk, action is needed. They need the most basic things, and they need plastics, they need material, they need corrugated iron, they need items that will be able to give them access to put even a temporary structure over their heads over the next few days while it continues to rain and while the flood or the water level starts to increase. And that's the sense that we're getting on the ground, the sense of frustration, where people are saying, you know what, government will meet us, halfway through there, or the government will meet us wherever it is that we're going, because they're taking the initiative to clean up their own roads. They're taking the initiative to try and find water sources to be able to have basic access to water. And again, criticism of provincial government that so far in the past 6 days, there's been a lot of oversight. There's been a lot of site inspections. There's been a lot of talk. And there's been a lot of different government officials saying they will do, but there has not been actual tangible results that have been seen. We have not seen any stations where there's food being set up by government. We haven't seen government officials handing out blankets. And this is exactly what communities are saying.
Well, let's see what that clarion call, as you mentioned, the needs of the people based on the past 6 days, gets to the right ears and action can be taken. People can start walking the talk when it comes to leadership. I just also want to quickly get a perspective from your end. I mean, you've been covering the story, you've been assessing as well, interacting very closely with the community members. How easy has it been for you to navigate, perform the functions that you need to do? I mean, you speak about electricity shortages, roadblocks, amongst other things. What's your experience been like to date? What are the challenges you're currently facing as you bring the news of the people on the ground destitute as we're speaking?
Yeah, Liesl, it's really been quite a logistical a problem on the ground. Our colleagues in the KZN office were hemmed in for the first 3 days. They were hemmed into their houses because the roads and infrastructure, they couldn't get out of their houses, they couldn't access, and it was difficult for them to get to location. And just to take a typical example of a story we were assigned to yesterday, we were sent to a community in Inanda just by the river bed of Inanda, where there'd been a rockfall landslide. And the roads there, just to be able to get access to the roads there, excuse me, there's a car that's going past us, just to be able to get access to the roads there, it took us almost 2.5 hours just to be able to get all the way from the top of Hillcrest all the way to Inanda. Our car ended up getting stuck. We had to get towed out of the mud. I mean, these are just the logistical issues that we've been dealing with being able to move around from point A to point B, just covering stories. And it has been a challenge, it has been frustrating, but it is so important for us to get into the areas where the people need exposure and media attention the most. I mean, the community of Inanda, you saw adults, you saw, elderly people sitting on those huge boulders that had collapsed in sheer trauma, saying that they have no access to water. One gentleman I spoke to said for him to go from the main road to settlements, it's almost a 7-kilometer stretch. And these are winding hills that go up, and the roads are not always passable because there's debris or there's some sort of obstruction. So in terms of being able to get around logistically, just as the media crew on the ground, it has been a challenge. And, the sense that I'm getting from community members who themselves feel like they've been held hostage for those few days, they're angsty, they're frustrated, and they just want some sort of resolution.
Ntombi, thank you very much for those, developments. Obviously, we'll continue to monitor the story with you. You are out stationed there throughout the day, and you'll continue to give us perhaps what's transpired after the leadership in the province and the King Misizulu, goes and visits the area, interacts with the residents to see how they can actually translate the needs and cater to their needs as well. Thank you very much for your time. Ntombi Mia is our reporter coming to live from Marion Hill, again updating on what's transpired in KwaZulu-Natal after the floods have caused havoc and devastation within that province. Again, a developing story we'll continue to monitor as it unfolds. Let's take a quick ad break. We'll continue with more news and updates on the other side. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. This is the Week in Review with myself, Liesl Wilson. Disaster management teams are on high alert for further floods as more rain resumes this weekend. Authorities have urged people to move away from low-lying areas as the death toll from floods in KwaZulu-Natal now stands at 395. Several government ministers navigated through the length and breadth of the province yesterday following the destructive heavy rains over the past few days.
Communities still reeling from the effects of the raging floods, and those mostly affected informal settlements dwellers, especially those located near rivers, and the ones staying in mud houses like this family. The respite gave hope, but it seems it won't last with warnings of further heavy rains. but plans are afoot to address their challenges.
We have actually calculated, when we're calculating all that we have quantified, we're sitting at 1.8 billion that is needed to be able to do interventions. Reprioritization is currently being finalized of about 1 billion to KwaZulu-Natal. This will provide 4,000 temporary shelters. This is the people that we are talking about who are currently displaced. Some of them are in the halls that are needing accommodation.
Water challenges are also immense. Infrastructure and treatment plans have been hugely affected, but people need water.
There are 4 teams. The first team will deal with management of tankered water, which is our first priority in terms of providing water. We realize that an hour or a day with people having no water, it can be a war.
Mchunu says tankers will be made available to ensure that people access water. Another plea is that of fixing the road network.
Honorable Minister, you know that you flew around and you saw what is happening. So all our economic linkages, those infrastructure, bridges and the roads are severely damaged. So they need urgent attention.
We need 5.7 billion rands. The actual costs will be determined once the detailed estimation have been completed. The National Department of Transport through the PRMG will support the province over the period of 3 years to address the current disaster it is facing with added financial resources.
The provincial government quantified the overall damage, which it believes will run into billions of rands. Thabo Mthweni, SABC News, KZN.
Well, motorists in Durban are rushing to fill up their vehicles following reports that Durban was experiencing a fuel shortage. The shortage is as a result of key routes having been destroyed by the floods, preventing the delivery of fuel. Some stations had to turn motorists around after their bowsers dried up.
Panic-stricken motorists rushed to fill their vehicles. Most of the affected stations belong to Shell. This is a result of transport routes having been destroyed by the floods. It's believed that some stations were limiting the amount to be filled by motorists. This station in Umhlanga in Durban opened late after delaying the fuel delivery. Some motorists say they had to drive around for hours looking to fill up their vehicles.
Yesterday we couldn't fill up at some petrol stations. You find that only a single bowser is operational. They're also limiting us to a fill up of 300 rand.
I live in the area and we've been driving around last night looking for fuel as well, and most garages were just out of fuel. People were panicking. But luckily we've got some colleagues in the area who advised us there was fuel that came through this morning. So yeah, we're also a bit concerned about what's going on.
Now I went to Pick and Pay. There is no petrol there. I have to come a little bit far. How can we manage? What is happening in this country? The best country I ever have seen in the world. What happened?
Taxi drivers say the shortage will negatively impact their business.
We are really concerned, especially about the survival of our business. As you know, we have just come out of COVID-19. Now the bad weather condition has taken us a few steps back. The damage left by the floods has caused a fuel shortage. As we speak, many people have reported that they are unable to get fuel. We urge the government to intervene to save the economy of the country.
By the afternoon, there was some relief for motorists. The Port Authority was able to open an alternative route from the harbour to allow the transportation of essential goods such as food, fuel and pharmaceutical products. Bongani Kema, SABC News, Durban.
Well, operations have resumed at Durban Harbour, which has temporarily suspended due to floods. Port authorities say much of the debris have been removed from the harbour, and they say they've also managed to open an alternative route between Bayhead Container Terminal and the port to allow for the transportation of essential goods such as food, fuel and other essential items. About 1,300 trucks have entered Durban Harbour each day.
Yesterday we were able to move 21 ships, which we had planned to move. So we're close to where we were before the storm. We left with another 30%, which should then clear in the next few days. Again, I hope that this rain that is threatening to come is not going to bring more debris that will then set us back. But really, the whole interest was to keep the port safe, our employees safe, community safe, but also to make sure that they do get those essential supplies.
All right, let's take a quick ad break. We'll continue with the Week in Review on the other side. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. This is the Week in Review. More stories at the SAWA, where many people lose their lives on our roads, especially during the long holiday breaks like Easter in South Africa. Making sufficient provision for life cover will ensure that your dependents have sufficient money to survive. But you need to decide how much life cover you need and how it should be distributed to avoid a situation where your assets are sold to settle your debts. Take a look.
The holiday season is upon us, and although this is a time to be jubilant, the unexpected predicaments such as death can also occur. Having enough life cover will enable your family to settle your outstanding debt to relieve pressure off them. Your current lifestyle and monthly expenses on your family will give you an idea of how much life cover you need. And if you have school-going children, then it is ideal to increase your life cover to ensure that they have enough money for education.
What a breadwinner might feel is that he or she would like to leave enough for the rest of the family to replace their lost salary. So let's make an example. Let's say someone earned 10,000 Rand per month. If they want to ensure there's enough for the family to have that 10,000 Rand for the next 30 years, they need life cover of 2.4 million Rand. And then thirdly, on top of that, someone might want to add other wishes, like there must be enough for the family to buy a car, or to fund tertiary education for the children, or to leave a cash amount. So all these things will then be added together to determine what's suitable for that family.
Even if you pass away, there's still an obligation to pay off your debt and estate duty. And if your estate is insolvent, your valuable assets might be sold to settle your debt. Consumers are urged to always assess how much life cover they have and whether it is enough to pay off outstanding debt.
Always remember, when you die, your debts don't follow you to the grave. Unfortunately, they follow your loved ones. So to protect your loved ones and to leave them with some legacy, make sure you have a life cover to protect them, to ensure that your estate is liquid and that there's enough value in your deceased estate to distribute to your loved ones.
Ceding your life cover to your estate and your creditors might be a better option rather than only nominating beneficiaries. Your executor will be able to use the money to pay off your debt. But if the estate is insolvent, the executor might be forced to sell your assets to settle your outstanding debt. Life cover does not form part of your estate, and your beneficiaries are under no obligation to pay off your debt.
Your life cover, as well as your pension fund benefits, do not form part of your estate, especially when, as far as your life cover, especially when there are beneficiaries nominated there. So you have an option, is either to cede some of your life cover towards your lender when you have a mortgage, or you could actually rather nominate a beneficiary. But if you have a will that says a particular family member, whether it's a spouse or your dependents, if you leave them with a house, you can also give them guidance that, through your will, that they can use the life cover to actually settle the bond directly. Because the other thing is, with money coming into your estate, the value of your estate will also determine the amount of tax that you pay on your life cover. Because when you die, you are considered to be on your way to SARS. So SARS takes its portion first, and then followed by secured lending, and then all other debts. And then once all the creditors are settled, whatever is left can be distributed to the family.
Having a will is one way of ensuring that your assets are distributed according to your wishes. If you die without a will, the law of interstate succession rule will apply, which means that your assets might not be distributed the way you want to. You can also utilize the will to nominate a guardian for your minor children.
A will is very important to make sure that your wishes are carried out upon your passing. If you pass away without a valid will, the interstate succession rules will apply, which means that your assets might not be distributed as you wished. And especially with minor kids under the age of 18, this is very important because the will is then a great tool to make sure that they will be taken care of. That's a place where you nominate your guardian, and you also decide how your assets will be managed on their behalf as long as they are still minors and not legally allowed to receive that cash in their personal names.
Your secured debt will be prioritized when your estate is being winded up. And if your estate is insolvent, your house could be sold to pay off your loan, and this could put even more pressure on your surviving dependents. Naledi Matlapeng, SABC News, Johannesburg.
In other news, the Mahikeng local municipality Northwest says investigations to identify the cause of the fire that ravaged 6 shops in the Mahikeng CBD are currently underway. The fire started in the early hours of the morning on Friday and was extinguished after several hours. But the incident comes just 2 years after several shops in a shopping complex across the same road were gutted by fire due to illegal connection of electricity.
Residents of Mahikeng woke up to scenes of smoke and fire as 6 shops in the CBD were burning. Fire and rescue services personnel extinguished the fire after several hours. The cause, however, is not yet known. Harun Variava owns 4 of the 6 affected shops.
It's devastating. It's a shock and never expected something to be like this. I was here yesterday checking up on all the tenants if everything was all right, and they were fine.
In 2020, some shops in a shopping complex across the road were also engulfed in flames. The cause of the fire, illegal connection of electricity. The mayor of Mahikeng local municipality, Tshepiso Mphehlo, says if the cause of the fire is non-compliance with occupational health and safety standards, there will be serious repercussions.
We just went through the shops and to check if they are really compliant, the connections of the wiring, and we were not impressed really. If we find the same things happening again, these shops have to be closed until the owners of these shops are compliant with the rules and regulations of our government.
Meanwhile, residents of Mahikeng say the fire incidents at shops in the CBD are concerning.
We are not happy the way the shops are being structured, and time to time we are going to see fire coming because our shop has been reduced into small shop.
We cannot enter that site, and now the clients are waiting for us. We cannot render the service to our clients.
It is not clear how long the investigations will take to identify the cause of the fire and to quantify the damage and losses. Silwane Khachau, SABC News, Mahikeng.
Well, the KAT Civils Company appointed by the Free State Department of Roads and Transport intends to write to National Treasury to ask for intervention. The company and the department have been at loggerheads over contract disputes where the KAT Civils contract was terminated by the department after it was found to be irregular by an Auditor General's report. The Auditor General recommended that the company's contract be terminated and payments be discontinued.
The legal battle between the Provincial Roads and Transport Department and KAT Civils is far from over. The company is fighting for what it says it is entitled to. In 2019, KAT Civils entered into an agreement with the department to fix some roads in the province, but there were internal disagreements between the company and the department. The company approached the court to seek clarity after it had exhausted all internal avenues. Added to that, the department appointed new contractors while the legal matter with KAT Civils was still pending. KAT Civils demanded that the department suspend new contractors on the basis that it was in contempt of court. Meanwhile, the EFF has written to the Office of the Public Protector to investigate alleged corruption relating to the new contractors. It's alleged that an advance payment of more than 180 million rands has been made to the contractors, without service being rendered. One of the roads involved is between Wepener and Bloemfontein.
180 million is paid to service providers in the province without them providing services. So we're calling on the Premier because yesterday she made a commitment that she's going to act on corruption. We want her to act on this acting HOD who's confusing his purse with a public purse. So one day her to act decisively on the HOD.
The Minister of Transport, Fikile Mbalula, says 900 million rand has been allocated for roads infrastructure in the province.
We allocate money to the province to maintain the roads and to maintain the roads and to build new roads. Roads must be maintained all the time.
The R30 road outside Allen Ridge in the Free State has become a death trap. Many people have lost their lives in accidents on the road since January. Motorists have been asking for intervention.
We can't do anything. If I want to go to Frankfurt, I have to wait for the taxi. And here is a small town. So we find out that we wait for 1 hour waiting for the transport. So it's very bad. It's very bad for the community and the businesses.
The situation is scary because we don't know how bad the situation is underneath the road. I think as a temporary measure, they have to put those speed humps because the signs are there, but people are just driving through.
The Department of Transport has denied allegations of 180 million rand advance payment.
I don't want to comment much until I get to my management to give me the real facts of the advancement payment to the contractors who have not yet started work, of which I don't think it's supposed to work that way. But I'll get the facts and then I'll still have to account for that at the later stage.
Meanwhile, there are still many incomplete roads projects that remain a nightmare to road users. Aphumelele Mdlalane, SABC News, Bloemfontein.
Well, the Rand Easter show is back in this year's events calendar after 2 years of absence due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The festival is one of Johannesburg's longest-standing Easter traditions, but this time it only takes place for a few days until Monday.
A fun-filled day for these families.
My experience was great so far and I liked all the rides. I tried all different rides and it was really fun.
My experience has been extraordinary with my family, so I consider you come back next year and they'll be open for the whole week.
We went on some of the rides. So far so good. The food is smelling very nice as well, I must say.
The rain show comes at a time when the government has just ended the national state of disaster and easing some of the COVID-19 regulations.
We've been really happy with the turnout. People have come. That tells me people are feeling safe with the fact that we are following the COVID rules and COVID protocol. And then we're doing that here at the rain show. We're ensuring that people who are in attendance have either got their vaccination certificate or they have a negative test.
The SANDF is again part of the exhibitions, displaying their capabilities and services for the citizens.
No state displays everything it has. We display what we need to display. I say the purpose is to reassure you that we are there, your guardians.
The return of the festival has also created an opportunity for the province to reintroduce the destination Gauteng tourism. This following a relaxation in travel restrictions across various borders. Herbert Memela, SABC News, Nasrec.
Welcome back. In other news, the Judicial Service Commission has been busy interviewing candidates for appointments, including the top position in the judiciary. But its handling of the interviews for the position of the next Chief Justice of the Constitutional Court ignited controversy and led to calls for politicians to be removed from the body. Mercedes Besent looks at the composition of the JSC and filed this report.
The JSC was established in terms of the Constitution. One of its responsibilities is to interview candidates for judicial appointments and also to hold judges accountable in terms of their conduct. It consists of 23 commissioners and a maximum of 25 chaired by the Chief Justice.
The JSC is made up of lawyers, politicians, and judges. And there are 23 members of the Judicial Service Commission. When the JSC sits to decide on the appointments of High Court judges from the different provinces, it sits with 2 extra members, which is the Premier of the province and the Judge President of that province.
After interviewing a candidate, the JSC deliberates behind closed doors about the candidate's suitability.
The way it makes a decision on who ultimately becomes a judge is through debate and consensus. When the JSC is not able to come to a consensus, they then decide on a vote. The majority of the members must vote, and the majority of the members who vote in one direction will constitute the decision of the JSC. That means for appointments to be made, the candidate must have gotten at least 50% plus 1 of its members.
While the Constitution gives the JSC the final word on the appointment of judges, only the President has the final say on the appointment of judges of the Constitutional Court, the Chief Justice, Deputy Chief Justice, as well as the President of the Supreme Court of Appeal and Deputy President of the SCA. The number of votes required for the appointment of judges and Constitutional Court justices differ.
So when the decision of the High Court, for example, are being made, the JSC sits with 25 members and at least 13 of the members of the JSC must vote for that candidate, for that candidate to be appointed. Now, for the Constitutional Court, because it doesn't sit with the 2 extra members, there are only 23 members of the JSC. That means a candidate for the Constitutional Court needs at least 12 votes.
There have been calls for the JSC to make its deliberations public.
Ordinarily, the deliberations of the JSC are private. That means they cannot be disclosed to the public. The only time that the JSC deliberations can be disclosed is if a decision of the JSC is taken to court on judicial review, and through that judicial review process, the JSC is required to disclose the reasons and the documents that related to the decision. And that means that the transcripts of the deliberations are also attached to the court record, and because court records are public documents, that is how the deliberations of the JSC can be made public. This was done because of the Constitutional Court's judgment in the Helen Suzman Foundation case.
Some have also questioned the involvement of politicians in the JSC.
And this is what happens, ACJ. Yes. CJ Mukwe writes to them. They don't respond. They wait for him to go. Now they know that the CJ is gone. Their process, you are now acting. We're going to look for ACJ. Then they start responding to Mukwe's letter.
Acting chairperson, that is a lie. It's a blue lie, what the Commissioner
No, but don't say I'm lying. What do you mean I'm lying?
It's a lie.
No,
It's
don't
a
say
lie.
I'm lying. That is
No, it's
disrespectful.
lying. No,
To
it's
say I'm
lying.
lying, it's
No,
disrespectful.
it's lying.
But if you are going to allow him to say I'm lying, it's wrong.
The Constitution requires the inclusion of 10 members of Parliament to sit on the Judicial Service Commission. 4 are delegates from the NCOP, 6 are from the National Assembly, of which 3 must be from the opposition benches.
Judge, you are homophobic. It's a statement I want to make unequivocally. You are homophobic, and in South Africa in 2022 is just unbelievable, for the record.
One analyst says what transpired during the interview process of judges and Chief Justice is a reflection of South African politics.
My view here is that what we have seen in South Africa recently during the appointments that have been made by the Judicial Service Commission, the differences that have come out, the partisanship that has been expressed by by different political leaders who were represented there. What we have seen actually shows that there is conflict in South Africa's society, politically speaking. Therefore, the processes, as we've seen in the Judicial Service Commission, it is a reflection of the state of politics in South Africa.
Matega has defended the participation of politicians in the process of appointing judges.
And people are asking, what should we do? Should we be removing politicians from participating? I mean, if our politics does not enjoy consensus, and if our politics is not grounded on common values, should we then say politicians should not participate in the judicial processes? The answer is no. I do think that politicians should continue to be allowed to participate in the Judicial Service Commission as it is. I think, however, that different rules of engagement will have to be in place. And those different rules of engagement should not be aimed at sanitizing the process of appointing judges. I do think that our democracy should mature in a way that we can define these processes, but our differences should be grounded on the pursuit of common values for South Africa.
The next key position to be filled in the judiciary is that of the Deputy Chief Justice, vacated by Raymond Zondo when he ascended to the position of Chief Justice. Supreme Court of Appeal President Mandisa Maya has been nominated by President Cyril Ramaphosa for the deputy position, and leaders of parties in the National Assembly have been given 10 days to comment on her nomination. Mercedes Besend, SABC News, Parliament.
All right, on to the Middle East now, where Palestinians have clashed with Israeli security forces at Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque in Israel. Videos purporting to be from witnesses show chaotic scenes inside the mosque where stun grenades and tear gas were allegedly fired at Palestinian protesters inside the mosque. Israeli police say that 3 of the officers were injured in the clashes, and tensions this year have been heightened in part by Ramadan coinciding with the Jewish celebration of Passover. Al-Aqsa is the 3rd holy site in Islam and also revered by Jews as the location of 2 ancient temples. In a statement, Israeli police say they have moved into the mosque to disperse a crowd of Palestinians who have been throwing firecrackers and stones. Hundreds of Palestinians were detained. All right, that's where we're going to leave it for you today. Do have a safe, warm day. Obviously, we'll be back tomorrow for a look at what we can expect on the week ahead. But for myself, Liesl Wilson and the team, until tomorrow, it is goodbye for now.